What's up everyone, Trent here.
Along with Julia.
And we have just come from the Sydney premiere of which movie?
Venom.
That's right, the latest film from Sony Pictures starring Tom Hardy as the titular Eddie Brock, aka the symbiote, aka Venom. What do we think of it?
You're going to have to wait to find out.
And as always,
You're watching
The Fortress. Now, before we go any further, this is a spoiler review. You've had your warning, it's in the title. If you've clicked it, it's your own fault. Anyway, I really enjoyed this movie. I loved it.
And now we flash back to our first podcast when we first saw that we were seeing a Venom and Tom Hardy was in it. This is gonna suck.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be terrible. And to be fair, it is kind of terrible. But it's so bad that it's good.
It's so bad that it's good. Yes, I completely agree. The humour in this is so dry and so dark and just so...
Awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so our humour too. So I was pissing myself laughing throughout the whole thing.
Yeah. Now, a lot of the early reviews have gone on and said that it's, you know, a terrible movie and it's kind of dated. It does have that dated feel about it. It feels like it belongs in the 90s. I got a lot of Terminator 2 vibes from it.
Yes, definitely.
But overall, my favourite parts of the movie were, surprisingly enough, Tom Hardy.
Yes.
And the interaction between him and the symbiote.
His acting in this is actually really superb because he's playing himself.
Yeah, it looked like he had a lot of fun with the role, which is even better. But the interaction, the way that they filmed this, if you haven't seen behind the scenes footage, they actually had Tom Hardy dub the voice of Venom before he was acting, and then the voice played as he was acting, so he was reacting to the actual... To the voice. And it played out really, really well. They were the best moments of the movie for me, was seeing Tom, or Eddie at that point, interact with the symbiote. Eddie, you're a loser, Eddie.
You're a loser.
Yeah, it was great. I loved... that was my... They were hilarious, they were dark, and they actually progressed the story because you got to learn about the relationship between the symbiote. And thank freaking God
they fixed that.
It's called symbiote in the movie, not symbiote. So if you're one of the symbiote lovers, sucked in.
There is one massive flaw with this movie.
There's a couple, but what's yours?
To me, it's the first 45 minutes. It is so boring. And with those earlier reviews, I tried to stay out of it as best as I could, but I can see why people left within that first half hour. Because it was setting up Eddie, and that was needed for this because it was taken from
okay, so it's taken from the Spectacular Spider-Man run where Eddie is the reporter who finds a source and is essentially discredited. Except instead of him being discredited because he provides a fake news story, it's because the Life Foundation people, Carlton Drake, is so powerful that it intimidates the publisher, and he essentially gets Anne Weying fired, his girlfriend, and that's when Eddie's life becomes a downward spiral. I don't have as much issue with the first 45 minutes because it sets up a lot of elements from the Lethal Protector story. So if you're a Venom comic fan, you will love this movie. It is essentially the Venom that we have been after. It takes a lot of different pieces. You've got Treese from the comics, but except he's not a multi-billionaire trying to find the Sanctuary. He's one of Carlton Drake's enforcers trying to retrieve the Venom symbiote. Spidey isn't in the movie, which is... They do a good enough job without Spidey. They do a good enough
job without Spidey.
And they explain how the symbiote came to Earth. Venom, they're in a lab, they're being tested. Riot is the one that is actually outside of the space station and gets transferred into different people. It's interesting seeing the bonding process.
Which is interesting seeing the bonding process for that, because that was a nice little storyline that we're following with not much dialogue. So it was just a lot of very short... sequences which were really good, and it got to the point where it was a little bit too cliche when the little girl got taken and it was just like, But then there were moments where you really connected with that character, the Riot, as well, by going, well, he's just trying to get back home, and then the bonding with the overarching villain. It was really good.
Yeah, and you get to see the motives behind the symbiotes. You don't learn about the Clintar at this point. They don't say Clintar at all. It is just symbiote, and they don't like being called parasites, funnily enough.
That was hilarious.
That was very funny. But yeah, it's the first 45 minutes really set up Eddie as a failure, as a loser, which Venom is quick to point out that he is a loser.
Yes.
But it did go on.
It just went on
just
that
bit too
little
long.
bit too long for me. If it was cut at probably the half-hour mark, but I was looking at my watch at that 45 minutes going, oh my God, it's been 45 minutes of the movie and we have not seen Venom yet.
Yeah. But from that point on,
it was full throttle and pretty, like...
It was pretty
awesome.
The only major flaw was the CGI at points, but you're getting that with a monster movie that is all CGI. It's forgivable. The worst sequence for me was Venom versus Riot. It was just a CGI mess.
It was, but then...
There were some beautiful parts in it, though, when they're separating the symbiotes.
That's what I mean. It kind of allowed for the mess as well, because it was kind of like that fluid organism instead of being something that was rigid and muscle. Seeing that fluidity was good. That it allowed for that suspended disbelief for me, where I wasn't sitting and going, oh, that's so CGI. No, it was great.
But I think the ultimate letdown was the script. It was clunky. The script was horrible. It didn't flow that well.
You had a really great female character that you could have done a fair bit with.
Anne Weying's character was very static until the key moment when, spoiler alert,
massive spoiler,
She-Venom comes in.
She-Venom.
So Eddie is separated from the symbiote again, and it's trying to find its way, and it takes over.
Try and find him again.
Yeah, and we get a very lovely symbiote and Eddie kiss.
And a very lovely Anne as a symbiote, because that makes me want to cosplay symbiote now. She looked awesome.
Yeah, but in terms of the script, it was a letdown. There were some really good moments. This is a Venom fan's wet dream, essentially.
Yes. Oh, definitely.
I was thoroughly entertained, and the post-credit scenes, there are two of them. The first one is relating to the movie, in which we see a certain red-headed... crazy murderer portrayed by, finally, Woody Harrelson in Cletus Cassidy. He doesn't portray Carnage at this point, but he writes "Welcome Eddie" in the scene in his own blood. And the second scene is a little intro into the Spider-Verse.
Yeah,
intro
that was really cool.
into the Spider-Verse.
Intro into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, but that was a really cool sequence. Miles is in kind of a ragtag makeshift Spidey suit.
It looked like a Halloween costume because it had a tag on the back of it. It looked kind of cute.
And it didn't fit. And he goes to visit Peter's grave after escaping the Prowler. And yeah, it's a whole lot of fun. I think if you go in expecting nothing great from this movie, you'll be pleasantly surprised and entertained for the most part.
Yes.
The overall motive of Carlton Drake, he plays the typical stereotype of a multinational villain.
A multinational billionaire villain who has way too much money and way too much time and disregard for human life. Yes,
and essentially the motive for Riot wanting to return back to the planet of the symbiotes is just so they can return and take over the world. So it's kind of, it falls short. It wasn't
even a planet of the symbiotes, it was an asteroid.
Yeah. But they were alluding to the
Clintar
planet. They were just on the asteroid when they were taken.
Yes.
But yeah, it was not without its flaws, but it's a very good first step.
It was a good first step between Sony and Marvel.
Yes, and it thoroughly redeemed the crap hole that was Spider-Man 3's Venom.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, so that's it for our review.
What would you give this?
For fun, I'd give it an 8 because I was thoroughly entertained. I was laughing my head off. You were laughing your head off. I was laughing
my head off, yes.
As a movie, I'm going to give it a 5. Okay. As an actual, as you know, a critical review. Yeah, critical. A 5. It is very, very flawed, but it is entertaining. So it's in the sound range.
Yes.
It's in the sound range. What would you give it?
I'd solidly give, like, movie-wise, probably a 5 or a 6. So let's say 5.5, because apart from that first half, the rest of it I enjoyed. I was laughing. I got shocked. Yeah. I was giggling. Like, it was good. I really enjoyed the Eddie and symbiote relationship. And
I love Tom Hardy in this. I love Tom Hardy in this. He was so fun.
Yes.
I'm sorry to cut you off. He was just so fun.
But as a fun movie and not like a critical review, like, solidly a 7.
Yeah. They did Venom very well, considering
it
is entirely CGI without him wearing a bodysuit.
I gotta admit, one of the first times when he took over Eddie was amazing.
Yeah. And the violence is there. It is quite violent. Eddie gets impaled at one point. It's not gory.
Because I'm not good with gore, as probably many of you know. I don't do horror very well, and like 13 things.
Yeah.
But you see a couple of heads get bitten off, but you're kind of like...
It's not bad.
You're reacting more to how they're going to react when their symbiote retracts and they go, I just bit someone's head off.
Yeah, it's the aftermath that's the best part.
That's the best part. So you're kind of over the fact that there's now a headless guy on the ground.
Yeah. And also, how good are our shirts?
How awesome are our shirts?
Awesome. But yeah, go check it out. You will not be disappointed if you're a Venom fan, if you're a Spidey fan, if you're a Marvel fan. I'm Trent.
I'm Julia.
And don't forget to follow all of our handles that are going around the screen. Listen to our podcast. We do it weekly or bi-weekly, depending on how we feel. The Fortress Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. And as always, you're watching
The Fortress.